Okay, today's vehicle is a '05 GMC Sierra, super common platform. So just this one has a pretty weird set of circumstances. It's a no crank, no start, uh, key on, engine off, radio doesn't work, HVAC controls don't work, power windows don't work, uh, key off, all the dash lights stay on, and it drains the battery in a few hours. I'm just going to walk you through my diagnostic procedure. This one went pretty quick, so I didn't get a chance to take any video or pictures on the vehicle. Really when we're working, we're just trying to get them fixed as fast as we can and get them out the door. These people just want their stuff back. So I'm going to take a minute and just go through my procedure so you can understand all the steps necessary to get to the end solution. So I use the same procedure for basically every diagnostic problem I run into. So we're just going to run through it. I'll probably make a series of videos explaining the procedure more in depth and showing its application across several different problems over the next year. But this is the first one, so it's going to be a little slow. Bear with me. I'm not all for the, polish and editing and all that yet, but, we'll get there eventually. So we're going to start. So that's the list of symptoms. It's kind of a headache, kind of an eye-opener right away, right? So here's my diagnostic procedure. We're just going to go through the steps real quick. Step 1, always identify concern, including symptoms. Symptoms are always the most important part of this procedure. You're not trying to fix what they think is wrong. You're trying to fix the symptoms they're experiencing. Next step is to take the time to fully understand the system, the theory of how it works, all the systems that are affected, how the systems work together. Some of the equipment that I work on is insanely complicated. Other bits are pretty simple. But you have to take the time to fully understand what you're doing before you move on. You have to understand how it works, or you're just going to get lucky, or you're just going to poke around and waste time and money. So, step 2, know how everything works. Step 3, using the information gathered in the previous steps, list all of the possible causes for the concern and associated symptoms. Now, sounds pretty simple, right? But having in-depth working knowledge of how these systems work makes it fairly straightforward to lay out possible causes and how these symptoms could be created. Again, this is, pretty straightforward. There's a lot of steps you got to take to get even this far, but again, pretty necessary. So, step 4, use the list of possible causes to determine the ease of testing for each cause. I'm lazy. Everybody pretty much is. And I'm here to make money. I got to do this quickly. So I'm not going to go with whatever test I think is necessary. I'm going to go whichever test is the easiest because it's fast and easy. And I want to determine the test that's going to be the most effective and give me the most amount of data or information necessary. So, number 5, start your testing with the least invasive and most inclusive test you're able to use. A lot of times for me, that's a lab scope, maybe an amp clamp, maybe even just a test light. It really all depends on your knowledge, the tests that you know how to use, how to utilize them, and what's going to give you the most amount of information in the least amount of time. Number 6, document all the information you gathered. The data is key. So you have to make sure you keep track of everything that you measure along the way. So after the first round of tests, you review your data. Using your knowledge of the device, information gathered, you must make a decision. Are you going to continue testing, or are you going to verify your cause for the concern? And number 8, if you decide more testing is needed, start at step 2, repeat the process until the issue is isolated. I guarantee you, if you follow these steps, you will find the cause for your concern. But if you skip any of them, you can find yourself working in circles, or if you don't fully grasp what you're doing, you're just going to waste a lot of time and energy, and it's probably somebody else's time or money. So, these steps are pretty important. I get to the bottom of a lot of issues really quickly using just this simple 8-step procedure. And I'm going to show you how it works a little bit. This is going to be a little bit of a longer video, so if you're not interested in this kind of stuff, probably move on. Otherwise, I'm going to show you how it works and see what we got. So we know the causes, or the symptoms are essentially things staying on. I don't know how well you can see that screen, but anytime I have a problem with things staying on, I'm looking at ignition switched feeds. Chances are you have something backfeeding, maybe an ignition switch that's not shutting all the way off, maybe a relay that's stuck on, or in this case, a unique situation, maybe a relay that's being half turned on. This is a pretty unique situation. As we get going, you'll see what I mean. But you'll have to just bear with me and use your imagination a little bit. So, first step is we're looking for the ignition switch. There's 2 different diagrams in here. These aren't factory diagrams. They're kind of, this is Mitchell's diagrams, but here is the first part of the ignition switch. You see we have a start circuit. We're going to just ignore that, assuming that we have a feedback on one of the other circuits. So this one's the accessory run and start circuit here, also listed as ignition 0. And then over here, this is power and just run. So in the crank position or start position, this actually loses its voltage. So that's important to understand, but not in this case. So we're just going to move on. So what we found is with the key off, I was getting low voltage, anywhere from 2.5 to 6 volts on this ignition 0 fuse and the TBC fuse, which is for the body control. But so this is kind of the cause, or what we found right away. And you can see that this powers quite a few things. This ignition 0 fuse, ignition on, goes to the powertrain control module, transmission, if it has one, in the transmission control module. You can see that there's more to this circuit. You see these hashed lines here. Most guys know that, but I always like to include it because you'd be surprised who doesn't. So you can see the hashed lines means there's more to this circuit. So we need to find the rest of this diagram. It's right here. This part of the diagram shows an accessory and run circuit here, and then a start run circuit here. So that's important to understand when you have power on these circuits. So that way when you're testing, you're not chasing your tail, being confused. So you can see that goes to the instrument panel, which was retaining power, and quite a few other things. So now you can see here that this over here says from ignition 1 relay 3 of 6. So what I found out testing right away is that this ignition 0 fuse, when I took this fuse out, I didn't have voltage on this side of the fuse. I actually had voltage coming in from this side. So I had power kind of backfeeding through this side of this circuit. Now again, you can get pretty confused here because it shows this wire here coming in, going to the transmission control module, going to the transmission, going to the PCM. But you see, there still is hash marks here. There's a ton of stuff going through this underhood fuse block. But we're going to go back to this ignition 1 relay, diagram 3 of 6. So, 3 of 6. There's my ignition 1 relay. And you can see it's got a permanent ground, which is kind of nice. Sometimes that'll be BCM switched, who knows. But in this case, G104, left rear of engine block. And here, that goes to the SEO ignition fuse diagram in 6 of 6. We saw that. That's what's feeding the solenoid side of this relay. Here's the switch side. And this is all of the other ignition switch fuses. Goes to the injectors, goes quite a few different places, also goes to the PCM, fuel sensor, evap, intake air, throttle actuator, fuel pump relay, and brake assist. So tons of stuff. What I found was this ground wasn't connected. And G104 actually has a few wires going to it. So what I want to show you G103 PCM right rear of engine block. Now the history on this vehicle was a really nice clue. Get through all this. Here we go. This is another one here. G104 left rear of engine block. That's a TAC module, throttle actuator control. So what we were finding out is I went to that relay. Any ignition switched relay, if I'm having ignition problems or feedback problems or anything like that, relays are a good place to start. Super easy to test. There's another ground at the right rear of the engine block. Anybody familiar with this platform knows that these grounds can be really troublesome, give you all kinds of strange symptoms. And that's what we were having here. Somebody had swapped the engine over, missed a ground, the G104 ground, and that's what was causing all of our issues. But, you know, the issue is pretty simple. It's just a bad ground, pretty easy to find, probably spent 20-25 minutes on it. But the key to this is the procedure that I use to get there. Because if you just poke around and hope you get lucky, you might. But if you just take your time and follow the procedure, you'll be amazed at how fast you'll still come to the conclusion. And then you'll have the confidence to get into anything, regardless of how crazy the symptoms are. So again, I'm going to take a quick shot of this. Feel free to use that. I hope it really helps. But so what we ended up finding was that relay, if I can get back there, on diagram 3. So this relay was actually getting voltage was backfeeding through this circuit, powering this solenoid. And since that solenoid in the relay was powered just slightly, just enough to connect this, and it wasn't even making any weird clicking noises like you get with relays sometimes with bad grounds or anything. It was just enough to hold this relay semi-engaged. And I was getting low voltage on all of these fuses all the way through to all the other circuits. So you can get some really strange problems when you have grounds, but if you just stick to the basics, stick to the procedure, you'll be amazed how easy some of this stuff really is once you take the appropriate steps. And the nice thing is working with basic knowledge and just real basic steps. Nothing too complicated. You can get a lot of problems figured out. So, I would really wish I took more time to make some videos of the vehicle actually acting up, but to save the modules and stuff, I really didn't want to poke around too much. I do want to go back to that diagram 3 of 6 and diagram 6 of 6. So first we're going to go to 3 of 6 so you can see where this relay gets its actual power from. So we're going to go to F over here, and you can see that's fed right, wow, it's on the other page. Diagram 2 of 6, E. See how much fun this is? E here. And then that is actually fed 1 of 6 right from the leads, right from the battery at the main stud on the fuse panel. So that gets all its power right from the battery. So that's why we had a battery draw, is because that was not ignition switched. So again, this relay was turning on, feeding all these other fuses, and backfeeding some other circuits. And I'll show you how it was doing that here. We're going to go to H first of all, here 4 of 6, and then we're going to jump to G 6 of 6. Here's H. That's your injection fuse that feeds your injectors, ignition coil. Nope, that's your, yeah, just ignition coils. And fuel injectors. That's kind of what that looks like. So all of those were getting power, just really low voltage though. I'm talking, 4 or 5 volts. It wasn't super high, just enough to barely light a test light. And again, I did all this with just a test light, so you don't need super high-tech equipment. Really basic stuff. Now we're going to go down to 6 of 6 and find G. And you can see G here feeds, if it's going to backfeed through here, it'll find a source of ground somewhere else. Okay, that's what's neat about electricity, is it'll find its way. If there's a way for it to get somewhere, it'll get there. And it's never where you think it's going to go. So it's definitely finding a ground back through the solenoid side of that relay, through all these other fuses. And then even through all of this and all of this, it was still finding a way to backfeed this fuse here, which is the ignition 0 fuse on this. I probably could have went a little more in depth and found out the exact reason it was backfeeding through to these fuses. But again, more than likely it was grounding back through here. And again, we're just fixing these things. Once you find the cause of your symptoms and the solution, you can pick it apart like an engineer if you'd like to, and sometimes I do. But most of the time, we're just here trying to make money, trying to get things fixed, get people back on the road. So even though this one sounds extremely complicated and like it was a big pain in the butt, it was just simply a ground not where it could be. You could have spent 4, 5, 6, 7 hours on it if you didn't know what you were doing and you chased your tail a bunch, no idea what was going on. This was actually brought to me. The guy said it needed a BCM. He was fully prepared to have me program a new BCM and put it in. Definitely not something that needed to be done. Talked him out of it. He let me diagnose it. We got it fixed for the cost of a bolt. Plus the diagnostic fee, of course. But again, way cheaper than a body control module and programming it. And way cheaper than spending hours and hours chasing your tail. So, the basics will always keep you in the straight and narrow. They'll keep you honest, keep you going the right direction. And this is what I use. Pretty much every car I fix, I go through these steps. Now, I do it really quickly. I've been doing this a long time, but these steps will get you there. There's a lot to learn in the middle, but at the basics of it, it's this simple. So, if you run into a problem with a bunch of strange symptoms, don't waste a whole lot of time scratching your head, freaking out. Just start at the beginning. Just figure out what you got going on, understand the system, how it works, gather all your information, do some testing, make a decision based on your testing and your results, and decide, do you need to do some more testing, or are you ready to confirm your cause? Now again, sometimes the test light's the best solution. Sometimes I have to break out a lab scope. Sometimes you need a combination of scanners, bidirectional controls, lab scopes. Sometimes you have intermittent concerns, so you got to do some data logging, or you got to hook your lab scope up and do some long-term testing with the lab scope. There's a lot of different ways to get to the end result, and a lot of different ways to find the problem. But in my opinion, this is the fastest, most effective way to find the root cause of any problem. I know there's a whole journey between all these steps, but if you can grasp this procedure, at least you have a good starting point and a good process to hammer down. And then if you get lost, you just go back to these steps, figure out which step you're on, what are you missing, go do that. Figure out what you're missing, whether it's information, you don't have the right equipment to do a test you need to do, you don't know how to do your test, so you need more training or you need some education on that. Maybe you can't get all of the information it takes to understand how that system works. I've had to bail on diagnostics before just because maybe the information wasn't available, or maybe the information cost more money than what was practical to get the piece of equipment fixed. But if you don't understand how it works, you can't fix it. You might get lucky, but you're not going to fix it on purpose. So anyway, I hope this helps. I know this one's pretty dry, pretty slow, definitely not polished, but I'm working on it. We'll get better here as the year progresses, but I'm still going to keep it really simple because at the end of the day, this stuff is really simple. People built it. We can figure out what's going on. So good luck.